Well, so far, the highlight of this movie for me, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but the highlight was that rendition of Blue Hawaii by the Filipino 4+1. Wow, it was sort of like the Donkey Serenade, only with a water buffalo. You don't usually see a group like that with a wind instrument, a downwind instrument. Boy, I tell you, if some guy started singing outside my window with a water buffalo on a leash, well, that'd sure be enough to dice my pineapples. You know, I'm not so sure it was such a hot idea letting that priest narrate this yarn. I mean, he's a nice enough old guy and everything, but I think he's sort of like making some of this stuff up as he goes along. Like that stuff about the blood of a vampire being like glue, and a wooden stake turns that glue into water. Now, who the heck ever heard that one before? I mean, he's kind of like padding his part, if you know what I mean. And then you got Victor's sister giving you the instant replay. It wasn't 2 seconds after that padre got through explaining to Chirito that her parents were vampires. Not 2 seconds later, that sister chimed in with the exact same explanation.
They were not your parents. Both of them are vampires, bodies without souls, possessed by the devil. And they feed on blood which they obtain from their former loved ones.
They really weren't your parents. They were vampires who came for your blood.
What? Thank you, my dear. Now, go to the head of the class. As for the rest of you, just go to the head. I mean, go to the commercial. Well, so much for faith and prayer. The old stake to the heart is still the way to get the job done. I tell you, we've got to get somebody off the bench to fill in for that padre. I mean, I have never once heard that a vampire doesn't fear a cross. I mean, everybody knows that a vampire fears a cross. End of report. I'll buy the part about the glue in the water, but I am drawing the line right there. No, I think I'll draw it over there. Hey, really, can I just cut out early this week?
Not yet, my dear. Your time will come soon.
Yeah, well, not soon enough. Don't whammy me like that. I'll stay. I'll do 2 shows. I don't know who did the casting for this film, but does the name Quasimodo ring a bell? Thanks, Quas. I needed that. I mean, half the guys in this movie are doing that old walk this way routine, and they do a lot of grunting. I know the answer for that one, of course. They figured that when it came time to translate this turkey into English, they could save maybe 15, 20 bucks. Well, you don't have to redub. Well, a peso saved is a peso earned. And speaking of the translation, I think that little joke of Dr. Marco's was lost in the translation.
There's no time to be joking.
Forgive me, it is a joke. Right here. What is this? A 38 or a 45?
You Mae West fans out there know how the rest of that line goes. Or maybe you're just happy to see me. Oh, oh, maybe you'd be happy to see this. It's called a commercial. And watch where you step, Chirito. You never know where that water buffalo's been. She's like in some kind of a trance or something. I mean, they just dangled that old rubber bat in her face and she was O-U-T out. That naturally brings us to show and tell time. Don't ask me how that naturally brings us to show and tell time. I only read them off the old prompteroo, folks. Show and tell time. Now, the name of this movie is The Vampire People, right? Well, I'm sure if you thought about that for a minute, you'd realize that vampires also come in animal form. Like the vampire bat. Oh, now I get the connection. But there are also less common known varieties of vampire animals, and I have a few very rare photographs to share with you. For example, here's a photo of a vampire fox. Now, nobody's ever made a movie about a vampire fox, but they do exist, and this photograph is living proof, okay? Here's another one. This, of course, is the dreaded vampire duck. Old MacDonald never had one of these on his farm, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. This is an actual photograph. And finally, Here is a picture of a vampire giraffe. Very rare indeed. It's hard to believe, but pictures don't lie. Oh, well, wasn't that fun? Okay, enough of the vampire animals. We've still got the vampire people to contend with here on the show. Back to the movie right after this break. Go, something about hurting the one you love. But this is a new one on me. One vampire hitting another vampire up for blood? Sorry, but I already gave. And by the way, that shoots a big hole in the Padres theory. You know about the blood of a vampire being like glue? Either that or right now Katrina has a mouthful of Elmers. I guess it hasn't occurred to Marco that the two sisters are identical, except for that cheap blonde wig, of course. He could have saved a lot of time and celluloid by just spending $19.95 on a new one of them suckers for Chorito. Oh, that cheapskate. Oh, there he goes again with that whammy treatment. You wouldn't like me. I'm not a blonde. If it's a heart he's after, you might want to look up the program director from here at the station. He's got a heart that's never been used. Only kidding. If the truth were only known, that man has the heart of a small child. That's the good news. Bad news is he keeps it in a mason jar on his desk. Oh, wow, I shouldn't joke around like that, because every time I do, it just gets me into... Oops. Mali, Hindi Tama. That's Filipino for wrong number. Oh, no, where was I? Oh, yes. A while ago, I looked away, and I swear it wasn't for more than maybe a minute. And when I looked back, I thought we were already in the commercial break. I mean, all that slow motion, the closer she gets, the better she looks kind of stuff. I panicked on account of I thought I might have missed my cue or something. I mean, like, I have never seen vampires romping around like that. What that chick really needs is a commercial for an iron supplement. Well, speaking of commercials, gosh, these segues are clever. Speaking of commercials, our advertisers want to lay these messages on you before El Concludo, the grande finito to the vampire people. Well, you gotta give the movie this much. It ended with flair. Lots of flair. When General Douglas MacArthur left the Philippines, he said, "I shall return." And it's kind of a famous quote. But if he'd have seen this movie, he might have changed his mind. And if he'd have paid to see this movie, he would have said, "I want my money returned." Now, I ask you, what kind of a quote would that be for the history books? Well, so there you have it, the vampire people. And just think, you could have been doing something constructive with your time, like sorting out your sock drawer. Well, tell you what I'll do. I'll make it up to you next week with a little number called Scream. And scream again. Feast your eyes on these previews of coming attractions. Oh, well. Yes, that's right. It's Vinny the Pea and Christopher Lee. I won't repeat the title because I know that every time I say scream. Oh, drats. I went and said scream again. Hey, guess I slipped that one through. Unpleasant dreams.
Mahalaga.